Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Inclusion for All Radio, where we have proper conversations for equity, for access, and for opportunity. And as usual, I'm your host, Oluchi Okafor. And I'm here today to discuss a very important topic that creeps up whenever we talk about financial inclusion, and that is digital financial services. Can digital financial services, and by those I mean the mobile apps that you use, I mean USSD, agent networks, and all of those, can they truly include people who cannot confidently use them? We know we talk about digital financial services, but we're also aware that a lot of people in rural regions and in other communities that are not the urban areas or the peri-urban areas may struggle to use some of these digital financial services, especially for customers who use feature phones and for customers who have trust issues around digital applications. Now, here is a quick picture. EFINA's 2023 Access to Finance Survey tells us that while formal financial inclusion has reached 64%, still digital channels, fintechs, mobile money, instant payments, those are the things driving the growth. And while those are driving the growth in certain regions and certain locations, when you speak about rural areas, fintechs and banks have not made as much progress as they have made in the urban regions. However, fintechs are the champions in those rural locations because we see that there are very few presence of banks, physical bank branches in those areas. However, even though that sounds like progress, can we really call it progress? Even though the high mobile penetration sounds like progress, is it really progress? Now, here's what keeps us up. 26% of Nigerian adults, and that's millions of Nigerian adults, they remain completely excluded. And even amongst the people that are included within the formal or informal financial services landscape, we also have to ask, can they use these services, these digital financial services independently? Can they use them safely? And when they use them, are they able to know how to handle issues that may arise, how to handle challenges, how to seek resolution for the complaints that they may have on these digital channels? And to help us discuss this topic and to dissect these challenges and also to discuss the way out and how to make sure that digital financial inclusion, digital financial services includes everyone irrespective of location, we have on the show today Imade Bibowei Osuobeni, who is the founder of Tech Herfrica. Imade, thank you so much for honoring our invitation. We're very pleased to have you on the call today.
Thank you, Oluchi, for having me.
You are absolutely welcome. And a little bit information about Tech Herfrica. Tech Herfrica is a leading award-winning digital inclusion organization in Africa. They're advancing digital equity, digital literacy, and economic empowerment for women, for girls, for entrepreneurs, and underserved communities. And it's particularly interesting for us as EFINA because these directly for women, small businesses, MSMEs, and people within the underserved community, all fall within the population of the people that we have identified in the A2F survey as the groups of people who are disproportionately affected by financial exclusion. And we are very glad to have you on the call with us today.
My pleasure. Okay. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. All right, before we go right into the questions, I am going to ask an icebreaker question. All right? And do you remember the first time? I know you probably remember your first bank account, but do you remember when you were signing up your bank account on your digital device, on your mobile phone? How did that make you feel? Were you hesitant? Were you worried? Were you afraid? Did any concerns surface when you were entering your passwords and other confidential information during sign up?
I'm trying to recall, and I don't recall any emotions of fear. I think, if I recall correctly, it was more so, how much are you charging me for this service?
Yeah.
So I don't think it was about the safety, because at the time I'd finished, I think I was in university or about to graduate, so I had some form of confidence, right, in using digital tools. But I think it was more so, how much is this going to cost me? If I recall correctly, yes.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And that's very interesting because that informs my very first question to you. And in your experience, do you believe that digital financial services, mobile apps, USSD, all of those, do you believe that they are truly empowering last mile users? I mean, it's very easy to say that they're empowering users who are in certain locations, such as the urban location. But in your opinion, from your perspective, do you truly believe that they are truly empowering the last mile users? Or is it just creating a new layer of difficulty and a complexity that they will have to maneuver around?
Thank you for that question. And I would say it's doing both. Coincidentally, we've been to about 26 communities in Nigeria. And so we have like a fair spread of what the experience feels like. So I would say it's doing both. Yes, it has created access for some people. Some people are now able to access financial services, but we haven't experienced true independence. So what is happening is, yes, banks are now seemingly closer in quote, but there's a new barrier, the digital competence. Access has improved, but the capacity to use these digital tools have not grown at the same pace. So what you're seeing is assisted digital finance and not self-use. So if you look at it from that perspective, then you can safely say it's not empowering as much. Because yes, they can now access the services, they can now use third parties and agents, but as individuals, we don't see very many instances where they can confidently navigate these services.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Imade, for sharing those information with us. And it's quite interesting that you have mentioned that the work that Tech Herfrica is doing has led the organization into 26 communities across the country. And you've also mentioned that much of what you see is assisted usage as opposed to self-usage. Now, that leads me to my next question, which is, how can we improve how confidently these low literacy users and people in rural communities use digital financial services? What can we do to improve how confidently they use these platforms and ensure that they move from that assisted usage to self-usage?
Thank you very much, Oluchi. And this question really hits deep because it's at the core of the work that we do. So, the first thing that has to be done is ensuring that we provide literacy to these people in a language and a context that they understand. So, typical example, we go to communities and we want to teach them or show them how to use these services. Best believe that we don't go to all of them with English. A lot of the times we have to train them in their own local language. Now, here's the trick. Many of them can even speak their local languages and understand it, but they cannot read and write their local language. So even when you're showing them the services and the devices, it's mostly in English. And even when they are translated, they still cannot read their language on the devices. So you then have to teach them how to use voice-enabled functions, how to identify icons, and it's a long, painful process. So the very first thing is just resolving this entire literacy issue, ensuring that people can understand concepts and appreciate concepts in a language that they understand. The second thing is to use voice enabled services as much as possible, ensuring that these people can identify icons and symbols, and more importantly, empowering and equipping the agents within those communities to assist these people in an ethical, structured manner. So everything has to happen at the same time. One, you're training them, and because that training process takes a long time, like I just said, language barriers and literacy barriers, we also now then need to equip the agents or community champions that would then help these people walk through this phase in a structured, confident manner. If that is not resolved, whether or not we translate devices, whether or not we have new devices, it will not really matter. Because again, think about it. A woman in your village may be able to speak a language, but can she read and write a language? So even if you give her a device in a language, can she understand it? So the issues are really nuanced, and hopefully, when we resolve this literacy issue, basic, and we ensure that these services, these devices meet women and people where they are, and then takes them through a phase that ensures that they get to the point where they are now confident, we won't achieve much.
Those are very interesting issues that you have raised. And a lot of times we talk about literacy, and you are absolutely right. We talk about the literacy gap. And a lot of times people also don't consider that it doesn't just end at passing across this information in local languages. Can the people who they are meant for read? Can they read what's on screen? Even though they can speak their local language, they may not be able to read it. So that is a very important response. Thank you so much. And I also hear you, voice-enabled services. That's definitely going to help. And also equipping the agents to assist ethically. Now, let me go to my next question, which is more around consumer protection. This is something that does not get enough attention when we're talking about rural penetration. When a transaction fails, when money goes to the wrong place, or a confusing message arrives, does the average last mile user know what to do next? Do they know they have recourse beyond physical bank branches? Or does the digital complexity create new vulnerabilities to fraud, to exploitation, or simply giving up or even dropping out of the formal financial system completely?
Thank you for that question, Oluchi, because as we're talking, I was just thinking about the experiences because we're very in it, if you get what I mean. And
Mhm.
I know for a fact that the issues we have heard and the complaints we have received is the fact that many people don't know what to do. And that comes with panic, that comes with what you described, where they just dump the entire thing, and that comes with resentment because if somebody does not have a clear path to resolution or confidence that this will be resolved, they get discouraged. So we have seen all the emotions, anger, fear, resentment, when these people do not know how to resolve the issues, and many times they don't. So there was an instance we experienced a couple of months ago where a trader in a community in the FCT, interestingly, made a transfer, and the person, the recipient, claimed that they had not received the transfer. What happened? She went back to the agent, and the agent said, "Oh, the transfer went through." And that is how I witnessed a woman cry. She cried bitterly because then she didn't have receipts, she didn't have the reference number, the agent was not even sure the particular date it happened, and there was a lot of confusion. And in fact, this woman swore to us that she would never ever do anything online again, right? So we have seen this firsthand, and quite honestly, from the conversations, many of them do not know what to do. Secondly, many of these agents are not equipped to really provide that level of support to these women and people who face the issues. And lastly, many times again, the path to resolution is not clear. And when that happens, there is resentment, and people just dump this old thing for what's familiar, which is cash transactions.
That is absolutely heartbreaking. That is such a sad experience. And seeing something like that firsthand puts things into perspective for you. And while you were sharing that story, I couldn't help but wonder, that is just one out of many. At least you witness that situation. How about the millions, the hundreds, the thousands of others that go unnoticed? And these are the people that we see drop out of formal financial system due to the negative experiences that they have encountered. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And to my next question, from your experience, if you had to name it, just one, if you had to name just one single biggest digital enablement gap right now, what do you think it is? Do you think it's the literacy? Do you think it's the language? Do you think it's the consumer protection issues, cost of devices, network infrastructure, cost of data? What is it in your own view and from your experience working with these communities?
I would honestly say, though unpopular, it is the general literacy. So it's not just digital or financial literacy alone, it's the fact, like I mentioned earlier, are people able to access the services in a language or in a form that they understand? And until that is resolved, language is nice because when you hear language, people think it's just translation. And like I said before, that doesn't solve the problem. That alone doesn't solve the problem. So while all of these things you've mentioned, devices, network costs, they are nice and they all layer up to the problem. But until that general literacy, where we recognize that we have to meet people where they are, and that whatever it is we're bringing to them has to be in a form and a context that they understand, we will keep having this issue. And it makes me wonder, considering the nature of the issue, is true inclusion on a one-on-one basis really, really possible?
Thank you so much for your response. That's a very thought-provoking question right there. And you have shared a lot about general literacy, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, these platforms cannot be designed with just one segment in mind. They cannot be designed for a certain demography. They can't be designed with just for just the people within the urban regions. We can't boast of innovative features if the person with the lowest with low literacy cannot access the most basic things like doing a simple transfer or understanding what an error message means. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to ask you a question on what's still missing. The providers and the regulators will point to the numbers, and to be fair, the numbers have improved. Like I shared earlier, formal financial inclusion has increased to 64%. So access, quite all right, has improved. That's undoubtable. But more accounts, more transactions, more coverage. If we go beyond the data to live the experiences that you have shared, what is still missing for users to truly feel empowered and not just technically included? With the infrastructure, what we have now, what is obtainable now within the ecosystem, what is the missing item? What can be optimized? What can be layered on to make sure that the people who we're advocating for truly feel empowered to use what we have at the moment?
Thank you for that question, Oluchi. And just before I answer the question, there's something on my mind I need to really share. Because when we talk about this whole issue of financial inclusion and even the digital competence challenge, one may think that it is only location based. So we have more people in rural communities. But from our experience, this digital illiteracy problem, as you have it, it's not location, it's location agnostic. People are still in urban communities and still are not meaningfully using these services. So it's not just merely the geographical location, it's saying the phase of life. Like, does this person, whether in rural, urban, or peri-urban, do they understand how to navigate digital tools? And can they independently use it? And to be honest, because we've seen people in urban communities who are stuck. You to amaze you that they don't know the basic things. And we see people in rural communities who can read and write and they catch these old things so fast. Yeah. Just to put that out of my mind. Now to answer your question, for users to feel truly empowered, I'm putting myself in their shoes. because I work with them, I experience them, I know their challenges. And the very first thing for me will be, as a person, think about it. What will make you, Oluchi, feel empowered? It must be simple, clear, and back to the point in a language that I understand. What seeks to include me must show my identity. What gives me the face of inclusion must look like me. It must look like what I can relate with. Okay, so for me, first things first, all of these approaches, all of these solutions must reflect the identity of the people that you seek to serve. So prompts must be simple, there must be clear instructions, and it must be in a language that they understand. Number two, we understand that, like we just established, that yes, I may be able to speak my language, but I may not be able to read and write my language. So of course, voice prompts, end-to-end voice interactions, icon-based features and guidance would help people understand the context and maybe use these things confidently. And also practical support from trained agents. We can no longer leave agency to the whim of people who want to make business out of it. There has to be a deliberate effort to ensure that agents who are helping these people are trained and they're able to reinforce learning, build confidence, and just generally support people that they're serving through the entire value chain, knowing at the end that, look, we're here to serve responsibly. So, in summary, there has to be what truly reflects financial inclusion. Before I can feel empowered, before my aunt in the village can feel empowered, it has to reflect identity. And that means access plus understanding. So yes, I have access, but do I understand how to use it? And that means, do I have the ability to transact independently? Must I wait for third parties or family or friends? That looks like protection and trust. Is there a pathway to resolution when I face an issue? Is there a pathway to how my issues are resolved? Do people even understand the nature of issues I face? And finally, meaningful impact. I'm asking myself, for me to feel empowered, for the women we serve to feel empowered, for everyone to feel empowered, it must translate into something. So, yes, I have access. Have I been able to make a transaction successfully? Have I been able to access a loan successfully? Have I been able to save successfully? And overall, how does all of this translate into health and well-being for me, financial well-being for me? And I can clearly see the impact of these things you're making me do in my life. There was a meeting we had. We usually have what we call the policy dialogue, where we bring together women from rural communities and the people who serve them. And I recall that a woman, I think EFINA was also there. The woman shared a story that she actually keeps money in disposable plate under her bed. Because, for instance, by the time she takes that money to a POS agent, they take charges. So 100 naira, by the time it goes through all the agency and all the processes for digital finance, it becomes 80 naira. So for her, she rather keeps the money in a plate under her bed. So it's not just even about access and even transacting successfully, it's a meaningful impact. At the end of the day, am I better off for it? At the end of the day, is my family better off for it? At the end of the day, is the community better off for it? Because if we don't resolve that meaningful impact, what happens is people would feel confident, they will transact. But if the benefit is not clear, they will revert to old behavior. So yes, these are my points, and I do believe that once we put all of this in mind, we will truly see the future that we so desire for financial inclusion.
Thank you so much for that elaborate response. To be honest, you've actually summed up our entire conversation, because the reason we do what we do is to improve the quality of lives. It's to ensure that people are financially healthy and people are financially resilient. So all the conversations, everything that we do at Inclusion for All is towards ensuring that people are able to recover and bounce back and know how to manage their finances should at any point in their lives. Thank you so much for sharing that. And additionally, you've also answered my next question. So we're almost coming to the end of the session. I was going to ask that what were the three actions that need to happen, since we have agreed that digital enablement needs to happen and also meet our consumers at the point where they are. And you've shared some insights around prompts, and that they must be simple, they must be relatable, and they must be easy to understand. You've also shared around the importance of voice prompts, especially for users who are unable to read. And then icon-based guidance. Thank you so much for sharing those. And also very important is the training of agents that you have recommended. You have mentioned that deliberate effort has to go into training of agents, because when you train them, they are the people who are providing these services to the last mile users. So deliberately training them to engage with those people ethically, to teach them, to lead them through this process, it's definitely going to help the cause that we're all advocating and fighting for. Thank you so much, Imade. Thank you, and thank you again. This has been such a rich and grounding conversation. You've brought a very rich perspective to the conversation that we're having here at Inclusion for All Radio. And you've also reminded us that the gap we need to close, it's not just about access. It's not just about providing the platforms. It's about meeting people where they are in any way, shape, or form that may mean. Thank you so much for sharing those with us. And digital infrastructure, it's necessary. It's not a question, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. We can't create an infrastructure that caters to a certain segment or caters to one person and does not cater to the next. That is not true inclusion. There must be a human relatable side of financial inclusion, literacy, easy to use, simplicity, the training, all of that needs to go in to make sure that every Nigerian, irrespective of location, whether or not they're in the urban, rural, wherever they are, every Nigerian can safely and confidently use the digital financial services. Thank you so much, Imade, for your time. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you for sharing the work that you do at Tech Herfrica with us.
Thank you so much, Oluchi. It was a pleasure being here. And just to anchor the entire conversation, we must always remember that access just opens the door. But what we do after that is what causes the true impact. So we hope that as we see financial inclusion grow and scale, we have more people, like you said, who are able to access usable, trusted, more importantly, and empowering services for themselves and their families, and that we're able to build confidence, clarity, and the skills for people to use all of these nice things effectively for their financial well-being. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now to our listeners, as always, the conversation does not end here. If what we have discussed today stirred something in you, please share it. Share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues, share it with your community, share it with your network. Share it with a policymaker, a fintech founder, a community leader, someone in the advocacy space, because this work, the inclusion work, does not depend on one party alone. It's not created for just the policymaker or financial service provider. All of us individually have a role to play to ensure that every single person is included and catered for. I'm your host, Oluchi Okafor, and this has been Inclusion for All Radio, where we have pro-poor conversations for equity, access, and opportunity. Until next time, keep listening and keep advocating. Thank you so much.